Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is contribute. Let's take a look at some of the definitions or the ways that we use this verb. The first way you might hear contribute used is to mean to give something in order to help achieve something or to provide something. So with this first definition, we can think of many different examples. I know for many people, their mind goes to money, right? You can give money to a particular cause, money that's going to be used for some type of mission that you believe in. Other times, people will contribute clothes. This is true where I live. It's very common to hear about winter coat drives, so people donate or contribute their coats so that others can have something to keep them warm throughout the winter. Now, a second way contribute is used, mean to help, to cause, or to bring about something. So with this second definition, I feel like we might hear examples of one thing contributed to the accident, right? So there might be multiple causes of something, right? But one thing can help bring about an accident, for an example. Now, a third way the verb contribute gets used can mean to supply an article for publication. So we might hear this in connection to newspapers, magazines, or journals, as an example. A fourth way you might hear contribute used, particularly in a classroom, is to give one's views in a discussion. This can be really important in some college courses. There might be large classroom discussions or smaller group, and you are expected to offer your ideas, your opinions, many times with support. You are expected to contribute. For now, you should know that contribute is a regular verb. To make the progressive form of this verb, you need to drop the E on the end because we have a vowel consonant E ending, and then we're going to add ing. That forms contributing. The past tense and the participle forms of this verb can be made by adding D since this verb already ends in an E. Our base verb, contribute, ends in a T sound. When we add the ed ending, we're going to add an extra syllable to this verb, and we're going to make an id sound. So the past tense and the participle forms should sound like this: contributed, contributed. Now, I do have a couple of phrasal verbs for us to talk about. We're actually going to be looking at different meanings for contribute to. One way the phrasal verb contribute to gets used can mean to give something or add something to something else. An example of this might be, we contribute to our community's food drive every year. This phrasal verb really ties back to an earlier example where we talked about maybe donating clothes, donating money. Here, someone is talking about giving or adding to the supply of food that is available for people in need. A second way to use contribute to can mean to be a factor or a cause of a particular event. An example of this might be, speeding contributed to the accident. Okay? So it means it was a factor. It doesn't mean it was the only cause. Maybe it was rainy, the road was slick. Together, speeding plus the rain led to this accident. Now let's continue using our verb of the day in a couple different verb tenses. Today we're going to practice the simple present and the present progressive. Let's start with the simple present. We use this verb tense to talk about our habits and our routines. These are actions that repeat with some regularity. Okay? Now, it could be something that occurs every day, but it could be something that occurs one time a week or even one time a year. We also use the simple present to talk about facts. The thing most of my students find challenging to remember is that our verb is going to change based on what our subject is. So when we go to make positive or affirmative sentences in the simple present, if our subject is I, you, we, or they, then we just use the base verb. Okay? So there are not going to be any special endings or suffixes on the end of the verb. But if our subject is he, she, or it, then we need to add an S to this verb. Okay? You can see that in my example here. She contributes to the nonprofit every month. Okay? So she, one woman here, right? We have this regular habit, right? An action that repeats. This might mean that she is giving money. It could also mean she donates other items or her time. But she is adding adding something to this particular nonprofit on a regular basis. Now let's talk about making negative sentences in the simple present. To do this, again, I pay attention to my subject. If my subject is I, you, we, or they, I'm going to use do not and then the base verb. You might also encounter the contraction don't and then the base verb. But if our subject is he, she, or it, we're going to use does not and then the base verb. Notice I'm not adding an S to the end of the verb here in the negative. Okay. For an example for us here, 4 in 10 workers with a 401k don't contribute. Right? Now, if you don't live in the United States, this sentence might not make a lot of sense. A 401k is a type of retirement plan. Okay? And every company can be a little bit different. There are some federal laws around how much money one can add to it. With some companies, sometimes they add money to workers' retirement accounts as well. But this sentence is discussing something that has shown to be a fact, that 40% of people that have access to this do not add in money. They do not give, right? We could use that verb here. Now let's look at making a yes or no question in the simple present. To do this, I start with do or does, whichever form matches my subject. That subject comes next. Then I use the base verb. Again, I'm not adding an S to the end of the verb here in the yes or no question. The only time I'm adding an S to the end of the verb is in the affirmative when my subject is he, she, or it. Let's take a look at another example. Does each family member contribute to household cleanliness? So with this question, we might be asking kind of for people's habits, their routines. Does one person clean the bathroom while another person vacuums, right? So where everybody is doing something to make the home nice and clean. Now let's move on and talk about the present progressive. We use this verb tense to talk about actions that are happening now. We also use it to talk about an action that is in progress during a time period that has not yet been completed. That hasn't been completed yet, I should say. So sometimes you'll see teachers' textbooks or other YouTube videos call this the present continuous, and that's just fine. It means exactly the same as present progressive. The reason I use present progressive, though, is that I hope you can see the 2 P's in the name of the verb, and that this will help you remember you need 2 parts to make your verb. So in the present progressive, we'll be using the present form of be, and then the ing form the verb. So our present form of be has 3 forms. We have to pay attention to our subject. So if our subject is I'm going to use am, am, and then that ing form the verb. If my subject is you, we, or they, I'll use are, A-R-E, and then the ing form the verb. Finally, if my subject is he, she, or it, I'll use is, and then the ing form of the verb. You can see this in my example sentence. The drought in Texas is contributing to low hay production. Hay would be food for cows and other livestock here. So drought is a period where there is not enough rainfall. So because we don't have enough rain, we're not able to grow and produce enough hay. So fortunately, this is something that is happening now. Let's talk about making negative sentences in the present progressive. To do this, again, I'm going to start with my subject. I'm going to use the form of be that matches, then not, then the ing form the verb. Here's an example. These two aren't contributing significantly to the group's work. Okay, so this might be that participation definition, right? They're not adding to, they're not giving maybe enough input or enough work into some type of project. Finally, let's talk about making a yes or no question in the present progressive. To do this, I start with a form of be, whichever form matches my subject. The subject comes next. Then we're going to have the ing form the verb. Here's another example. Is climate change contributing to an extended allergy season? So this is a question I've heard different people ask medical professionals because they feel like, oh, my eyes are a bit itchy or my nose is runny, and it's doing that for longer periods than what I've been used to. And I believe doctors have said yes. The warming of our climate and changing of our climate does impact those seasonal allergies. Now let's move on and talk about some words that are related to our verb contribute. And the first word we're going to talk about today is the noun contribution. This noun can have a couple different meanings. We're going to talk about 3 of them. One way the noun contribution gets used is to refer to a gift, maybe some type of payment to a fund or some type of collection. An example of this might be, there can be a tax benefit to making charitable contributions. This is where you give money to charities or nonprofit organizations. A second way to use the noun contribution is to refer to the part played by some person or thing that leads to or brings about a type of result or kind of helps us move forward or advance with something. An example of this might be, many people made contributions to make this event a success. So we could talk about things people gave. Maybe we're talking about the time, the knowledge they brought to a particular event to make it successful. A third way to use the noun contribution is to refer to some type of article or another piece of writing that has been sent to and published. Again, this could be in a magazine, a newspaper, a journal, something of that nature. An example of this might be, we're requesting contributions for the alumni magazine. So here, it sounds like staff is asking people who have graduated from a particular school, the alumni, to write, send something in that could be included in the alumni magazine. Another related word we might encounter is the noun contributor. This can refer to a person or thing that contributes something. An example of this that I've seen. She's been a consistent contributor throughout the season. I see this a lot as we talk about athletes, particularly in sports where there are points. It's kind of the height of basketball season here in the United States. And so this type of sentence, she's been a consistent contributor, makes it sound like she is someone who scores points quite regularly, right? She's making the team perhaps successful. A second way the noun contributor gets used is to refer to someone who is writing articles. Again, it's most commonly for magazines and newspapers. An example of this might be, he's been a contributor to the newspaper for over a decade. So here for over 10 years. One last word for us to discuss today, it's the adjective contributory. This adjective means that something is playing a part in bringing something else about. You might think about our earlier definitions where we talked about something causing something else. An example of this adjective in a sentence might be, his contributory negligence is not a defense to the defendant's subsequent negligence. This sentence might be a little difficult to understand, but it sounds like it's coming from a legal matter, right? So someone has accused a defendant of being negligent. But that person who's been accused is going, that person they also played a part in it. But here, I imagine this being a statement that a judge would utter. The judge is saying contributory, that additional or negligence doesn't defend or doesn't dismiss the defendant's negligence as well. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.